I watched the ice melt in my glass for 10 minutes before I realized I was still holding it. The condensation had soaked through the cocktail napkin and made a perfect, trembling circle on my pants. But no one noticed. I was invisible. Somewhere beyond the frosted glass doors, behind two white pillars wrapped in faux ivy, the rooftop buzzed with overpriced laughter and high heels scraping against marble. Lorna was out there. Somewhere. I hadn't seen her for 23 minutes. That's not a guess. I was timing it. At 9:07, she said she needed just a second to introduce herself to someone from procurement. At 9:30, I was still clutching her purse because she didn't want it weighing her down. At 9:42, I found her purse still in my lap. I stood up and walked toward the restroom, not because I had to pee, but because I needed to see my face. Needed to see if I was still real. The mirror in the hotel bathroom had one of those backlit halos, like a makeup influencer's ring light. It made every pore on my face look like a crater. I leaned in. My eyes looked older than they did this morning. I heard a laugh echo from the hallway, hers. I opened the door just enough to see a sliver of her black dress. She was laughing into someone's chest. Not at someone. Into them. That lean-in kind of laugh. Like she needed their torso to finish the joke. His hand hovered at her lower back like it had been there before. Confident. I didn't walk out. I closed the door again. There was a TV mounted in the corner of the restroom, muted, playing some news loop. I stared at the scrolling ticker for a while, watching silent headlines about economic downturns and cruise ship accidents. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then my phone buzzed. One word. No punctuation. Come. I stared at it for way too long. Not because I didn't know what it meant, but because I did. I didn't walk out right away. I sat there in the bathroom lounge, phone in hand, thumb hovering over that single, maddening word. Come. Not where are you? Not are you okay? Not even please. Just that cold, imperious summon. And for some reason, God knows why, I stood up like a dog hearing its name. The hallway outside was quieter now. Some of the guests had moved upstairs to the cigar terrace. The soft hum of muted conversations drifted through the marble like a breeze. I followed the direction where I thought her voice had been. My footsteps felt too loud, like I didn't belong in the same dimension as everyone else. There was a glass wall that looked out over the bar area below, part of the hotel's atrium design, all exposed angles and minimalist everything. I stopped there, partly because I needed to breathe, and partly because what I saw froze me mid-step. She was at the far end of the bar, sitting on one of those high stools with the brass footrest. Not alone. The man beside her had his elbow propped casually on the counter, turned toward her like they were already deep into something private. Lorna was holding her drink loosely, swirling it, not drinking. She does that when she's nervous. But her body language told a different story. Relaxed shoulders, legs crossed toward him, that low, knowing smile she used to give me before our first dates. I felt a flash of heat in my throat. Not quite anger. More like shame. Shame for thinking that maybe I was just imagining things earlier. Shame for second-guessing the look she gave me when she accepted the hotel keycard like it was a joke. Like none of it meant anything. I couldn't hear what they were saying, of course, but there was something unmistakably intimate in their silence. That pause between words that people only take when they're comfortable, or when something's already been decided and they're just passing time until it happens. Then he leaned in, not too close, just enough to say something directly into her ear. She didn't flinch. She smiled, tilted her head slightly, as if to let him in a little more. And I realized she wasn't tipsy. She wasn't flirting out of politeness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a continuation of something, not the beginning. My hands went cold. My first instinct was to march down there, confront them, demand an explanation she wouldn't give. But instead, I backed away from the glass and walked slowly toward the elevator. I didn't leave. Not yet. I needed to know where she'd go next. I didn't realize I had pressed the elevator button until the doors slid open in front of me. My thumb was still resting on it like I was waiting for permission. The hallway behind me echoed faintly with music and clinking glasses, but everything in me felt suddenly silent. I stepped inside, hands still shaking, and hovered over the floor options like I didn't already know what I was doing. I wasn't going home. Not yet. I wasn't even sure I had a home to go back to anymore. My finger landed on 17. That was the executive suite floor. I remembered it because when Lorna got the invitation to this event, she'd mentioned it offhandedly. They usually give the senior team access to 17. It's like stupid fancy. Garrison calls it the Sky Temple. She had laughed when she said it. But I remembered. I always remembered those little things, even when they seemed like background noise at the time. Maybe especially then. The elevator began to rise with that gentle mechanical hum, the kind that makes your ears pop just enough to notice. As the numbers climbed, I kept playing the message over in my head. Come. It wasn't a plea. It was a pull. The kind you send to someone you assume will obey. She hadn't even added my name. The doors opened with a soft chime. Floor 17 was almost too quiet. Carpeted in deep navy, dimly lit with recessed ceiling lights, and lined with minimalist black and gold placards next to each door. Everything smelled like eucalyptus and money. My shoes barely made a sound on the floor, but every step felt like thunder in my chest. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a door had just clicked shut. I caught a glimpse of a black dress vanishing behind it. Not enough to be sure, but enough. I stood there for a long time, just staring at that door. My legs refused to move closer, like some primal part of me knew what I'd find behind it and didn't want to participate. I told myself maybe it wasn't her. Maybe the dress was similar. Maybe I was building something out of shadows. But my gut had already cast its vote, and it wasn't buying any of my excuses. That's when I heard the sound. Muffled voices. A soft laugh. A man's voice, lower, confident. Her voice, replying with a tone I hadn't heard from her in months. Light. Carefree. Almost flirty. It didn't sound like my wife. Or maybe it sounded exactly like her when I wasn't in the room. I stepped back, almost stumbling. My heart was trying to punch through my ribcage. I reached for my phone again, half hoping she'd send another text. Something I could respond to. Something that made sense. Nothing. Just the cold black screen, staring back at me like a dare. And then, suddenly, the door opened. Not wide. Just enough. But the person who stepped out wasn't Lorna. It was housekeeping. A young woman in a gray uniform pushed her cart quietly into the hallway and paused when she saw me. I tried to act natural, gave a stiff smile, and turned toward the elevator like I hadn't just been lurking outside someone's door like a lunatic. I pressed the down button 3 times in a row. As I stood there, sweating, praying she wouldn't step out next, I realized something I hadn't considered until that moment. The room I was watching? It wasn't even hers. The elevator ride back down felt longer than the one going up. Isn't that strange? Gravity pulling me back to Earth, and yet it dragged like I was sinking into something heavier than before. I didn't press the lobby. I pressed the 9th floor, because that's where the event had started, the main reception. I didn't want to leave just yet. I wanted to walk back in, maybe catch her mid-conversation and prove myself wrong. Maybe she'd be sipping water now. Alone. On her phone. Maybe she'd look relieved when she saw me and laugh at how paranoid I'd been. I wanted that so badly it hurt. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into a hallway that was somehow even quieter than the 17th. Most of the guests had cleared out, it seemed. A few were still loitering near the end of the long banquet table where desserts had once been. There was a group of 3 men by the bar, arguing over the bill, even though the entire thing was prepaid. I scanned the room quickly, trying not to look desperate, trying not to make eye contact with anyone long enough for them to ask if I was lost. She wasn't there. Neither was Garrison. I walked slowly through the space, pretending to check my phone, my heart pounding with each corner I turned. I peeked through the frosted windows of the lounge near the terrace. Nothing. The rooftop stairs were blocked by velvet rope now, closed for the night. I even asked the bartender, in the most casual voice I could manage, if he'd seen a woman in a black dress, shoulder-length dark hair, with a guy in a navy suit. Might have been her boss. He raised an eyebrow. A lot of black dresses tonight, man. That's all he said. Then he turned back to wiping down the counter like I didn't exist. I stood there for a few more seconds, my hand gripping the phone in my pocket. I considered texting her. Where are you? Felt too insecure. Everything okay? Sounded like something a dad would send. In the end, I typed out hey, and stared at it for so long I had to retype it twice because the letters started to look wrong. But I never hit send. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened her location sharing. Now, before you roll your eyes, I'm not some obsessive creep. We turned it on years ago when she got lost in the snow driving back from her sister's cabin. It was one of those safety compromises couples make. I hadn't checked it in forever. But that night, With my gut dragging behind me and my head full of static, I opened it. It said she was in the building. 17th floor. I stared at the tiny blue dot hovering above mine like a secret she didn't even know she was telling. But it didn't make sense. I was just on 17. I saw a door close. Housekeeping came out. No one else. Unless. No. I shook my head. No, because if that was her, it meant she was behind that door the whole time. Listening. Talking. Maybe more. But then, why text me? Come. Like an invitation. Or a warning. I rode the elevator back up without even thinking. I felt like I was chasing a ghost, retracing my own footsteps in a nightmare I hadn't yet woken up from. This time, I walked slower. I passed the same eucalyptus-scented hallway, paused in the same spot. The door was now wide open. Room 1724. Lights on. Empty. No luggage. No heels by the door. No jacket over the chair. The bed was untouched, perfectly made. The minibar was still sealed with its sticker. The TV wasn't even plugged in. The room looked staged. Like a showroom. I stepped back into the hall, confused, dizzy with adrenaline. And then I heard the elevator behind me ding. I turned, expecting to see her. Maybe caught off guard. Maybe carrying her purse with that same guilty tilt of the head she gives when she knows I'm mad, but doesn't want to fight. But it wasn't her. It was no one. The elevator was empty. Just me, and the silence, and that damn unreadable blue dot on the map, still floating on floor 17, like it knew something I didn't. I checked the room number again. I hadn't gotten it wrong. And yet I was staring into an untouched hotel room. It was the perfect hiding place. Or the perfect trick. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I drove home in silence, radio off, window cracked just enough to let the wind sting my face. The city was empty and indifferent. Blurry traffic lights, storefronts closed like eyelids, glowing crosswalk signs ticking down to zero for no one at all. When I pulled into the driveway, her car wasn't there. I didn't even get out. I just sat in the driver's seat with my hands in my lap, waiting for headlights that never came. At 2:11 a.m., I finally went inside. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I knew this house too well. I walked straight into the kitchen and opened the cabinet above the fridge. Behind an expired bottle of cough syrup and a box of stale crackers was the bottle of whiskey I'd been avoiding since New Year's. I didn't pour it. I drank straight from the neck. By 3 a.m., I was on the floor of the living room, staring at the ceiling fan that wasn't moving, phone balanced on my chest, still watching her location hover in place like a bad omen. Still at the hotel. Same floor. No movement. I refreshed the map every few minutes, thinking maybe she'd left and forgot to turn it off. But it never changed. At 4:27, her disappeared completely. Location services disabled. No warning. No error. Just gone. She came home at 5:06 a.m. I heard the garage door open before I even heard her footsteps. I was sitting upright on the couch by then, blanket over my lap like a patient in a psych ward. She walked in like nothing had happened. Shoes in her hand, hair slightly messy but not scandalous. She was wearing a different coat than the one she left in. Beige instead of black. I noticed that first. "Hey," she said softly, like I'd just woken up early. "Didn't mean to wake you." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. She paused. "Everything okay?" I asked her where she'd been. She blinked. "At the hotel. I told you. You left early, remember?" I asked if she stayed with anyone. Her expression didn't change. Not guilt. Not panic. Just a careful kind of stillness. I had a few drinks. It didn't feel safe to drive. I crashed in one of the open suites they offered for staff. HR had the keys. She set her purse down gently on the counter. "I meant to text again, but I figured you were asleep. I didn't want to start something over nothing." Over nothing. That phrase echoed in my skull like an insult. I asked her what room number it was. She hesitated. 17 something? "I don't know, Nick. I was half asleep when I got there." "Why?" I told her I'd been on that floor. That I saw an empty room. No sign of her. She narrowed her eyes. "Wait, were you following me?" It flipped on me. Instantly. Like it always does. Like I was the one caught in the act. I was worried. I said, quieter than I meant. "You disappeared. You left me," she replied. "You literally walked out and never came back. You didn't answer my text." "That wasn't a text," I said. "That was a command. One word. Come. Like I'm supposed to just show up like a trained dog." She didn't argue. She didn't apologize. She just walked past me into the bathroom and shut the door. When I heard the shower turn on, I picked up her phone from the counter. I hadn't done that in years. Not once. I used to think pride was the reason, but it was fear. I knew that now. I was always afraid of what I'd find, so I never looked. This time I looked, and what I found wasn't a smoking gun. It was worse. It was nothing. No messages. No call history. No location activity. Her call log was completely clean, like it had been wiped. Even the regular spam calls or telemarketer voicemails were gone. Who does that? Who deletes everything? I opened her browser. History cleared. I checked her email. The sent folder had nothing from the past 24 hours. I stood there with her phone in my hand, mouth dry, heart hammering, surrounded by perfect digital silence. Like her night had been scrubbed from existence. When she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, she saw the phone in my hand and stopped cold. We stared at each other. "You're checking my phone now?" she asked. I didn't speak. "Jesus, Nick," she muttered, snatching it from me. "You've really lost it." Then she walked away. I sat back down on the couch, hands clasped between my knees, pulse in my throat. And in that moment, I realized the cruelest part of all of this wasn't what she'd done. It was how easily she'd made me doubt I'd ever seen it in the first place. It sat on the edge of the sink like it had been there for days, but I knew it hadn't. I knew it hadn't because I cleaned that bathroom every Sunday, like clockwork. And if a silver bracelet with a charm shaped like a tiny compass had been sitting there, I would have noticed. I'm the one who wipes down the granite, folds the towels, lines up the toothpaste and mouthwash. I'd know. But there it was, lying perfectly straight beside the soap dish. Not thrown, not lost, placed. I didn't touch it right away. I just stood there staring at it, trying to remember if I'd seen it before. Not just on the counter, but on her. I couldn't. That bothered me more than it should have. It wasn't like Lorna to wear jewelry I didn't recognize. She wasn't the spontaneous type when it came to fashion. Every accessory had a place, a context. She didn't rotate new pieces in and out like she was trying on new identities. That wasn't her. Except lately. I'd started to wonder if maybe I didn't know what was her anymore. The bracelet didn't look expensive. It wasn't flashy. The charm was tarnished in places, the kind of fake silver that turns green after a few weeks of sweat and perfume. And yet it was delicate in a way that suggested meaning. Like it was a gift. Something given in quiet, not bought in public. I finally picked it up. The clasp was slightly bent, like it had been yanked off in a hurry. I turned it over in my hand, trying to find a maker's mark or an engraving. There was none. But on the back of the compass charm, there was a faint fingerprint smudge. Smudged, but still visible. Probably hers. Probably. I walked out of the bathroom and into the bedroom where she was pretending to sleep. That was her latest strategy. Silence. Disengagement. Every confrontation now ended in her rolling away, face to the wall, breathing slow and exaggerated. I don't even know if she was doing it to avoid me anymore. It felt more like theater, like she wanted me to see the effort. I held up the bracelet and asked, "Where did this come from?" No response. "Lorna." Nothing. Not a flinch. Not even a twitch of the shoulder. I sat down on the edge of the bed and repeated the question, slower this time, lower. "Where did this come from?" She shifted under the blanket, then finally sighed. "I don't know. It's old. Probably from a drawer." "Which drawer?" "I don't know, Nick. Do you catalog every bracelet I own now?" "I've never seen it before. Not once in 6 years." She turned to face me then, eyes open but unreadable. "You're spiraling. You think everything is a clue now. It's a bracelet. A cheap one. You want to run DNA on it. Go ahead." That last part, that sarcastic bite, "You want to run DNA on it. Go ahead." That broke something small inside me. Because she wasn't denying. She was deflecting. And I knew that tactic. I'd used it myself when I was 22 and had nothing to lose. I placed the bracelet gently on the nightstand and stood up. "If it's meaningless, you wouldn't be this defensive. If you trusted me," she said, "you wouldn't be looking for something to accuse me with." We stared at each other in that cold morning silence, sun bleeding weakly through the curtains. The light hit her face at an angle I didn't recognize. I know that sounds strange, but sometimes you can look at someone you've known for years and suddenly feel like they've shifted by a fraction of an inch, and now they're a stranger. "I don't think you're lying to me," I said slowly. "I think you're hiding something from yourself. And I think you're waiting for me to make it real so you can blame me for the fallout." She blinked twice, then rolled back over, blanket pulled tight. I walked out of the room and into the garage. I sat in the car, doors closed, engine off. I needed silence. No music, no wind, no phone. Just the hard shell of isolation to press against. I held the key in the ignition and stared at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look angry. I looked hollow. And then, without thinking, I opened my contacts, found her name, and hit info. Scrolled down. Linked devices. She had a second device logged in. One I didn't recognize. An old phone model. Something she hadn't used in years, allegedly lost, replaced, and recycled. I stared at the name. Lorna, 5SE. She had never disconnected it. I had to Google how to access data from a sync backup on a secondary device. That's how deep I was in now. I sat in the parked car in the driveway, sun cutting across the windshield in hot white bands, and started digging through support forums like I was preparing for a heist. I wasn't even sure what I hoped to find anymore. A text, a name, a picture, maybe even nothing. Nothing would have been a relief at this point. But that wasn't what I found. After 20 minutes of stumbling through archived cloud logins, forgotten passwords, and a brief moment of panic when I thought I'd accidentally wiped something, I got in. The device was old, all right. Last active a year and a half ago. Battery status, unknown. But her messages? They were there. And synced. Because of course she never turned that setting off. She probably thought it died in a drawer and took all her digital ghosts with it. The messages weren't scandalous. Not at first. Not the kind of thing that would jump out at anyone. But the deeper I scrolled, the more I started noticing patterns. The same name popping up again and again, Elias. Friendly at first. Work-related, harmless. Then after a few months, more casual. You still up? You made that meeting bearable. Tell me more about that story you didn't finish earlier. Late-night messages. Random check-ins. Playful inside jokes. And then one that stopped me cold. Still thinking about that elevator ride. There it was. The scar under the surface. I couldn't breathe for a second. I felt like someone had cracked open my chest and was standing inside it, looking around. Still thinking about that elevator ride. I scrolled further. The timestamps were old. The conversation tapered off 6 months ago. No drama, no confrontation. Just silence. Like something was paused, not ended. And then, as if the phone knew what I needed next, I stumbled onto the hidden photo album. She never deleted it. The app wasn't on her current phone anymore, but the ghost of it still lived in the backup. 37 photos, most of them harmless. Sunsets from work trips, coffee cups, hotel room views. But then, at the very end, 2 videos. The first was short. 8 seconds. Shaky. The lens caught the corner of a hotel bed and part of a man's sleeve. He was saying something, but the audio was muffled. Lorna's voice whispered something back. I couldn't make it out. Then it cut. The second video was longer. 51 seconds. This one showed her face. She wasn't doing anything inappropriate. Just smiling at the camera, lying sideways on a pillow in a white hotel robe. She looked relaxed. Happy. Intimate in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes weren't tired. Her voice was soft and private when she whispered, "This is so stupid. You're not even going to keep this." But someone had. And somehow, it ended up in that forgotten device. The one she thought was dead. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream or throw the phone or pound the steering wheel like some dramatic movie character. I just sat there, still and cold and silent, letting the realization seep into every pore of my skin. This was never about one night. It was a long, slow drift she let happen and hoped I wouldn't notice. The betrayal wasn't physical. Not entirely. It was in the messages. In the secrecy. In the joy she had reserved for someone else. Joy that hadn't touched me in years. I locked the phone and placed it in the glove compartment like it was radioactive. Then I walked back into the house. She was in the kitchen, hair tied up, casually stirring something on the stove like the last 12 hours hadn't happened. She turned and smiled when she saw me. Not guilty. Not tense. Just routine. Hungry? She asked, like we were still a couple. I looked at her for a full 5 seconds and said, "Elias says hi." She froze. That's when the smile cracked. Just slightly. A half-second delay in her eyes. A twitch of panic behind her calm. "What?" she said too quickly. I walked past her and poured myself a glass of water I didn't want. "You should really factory reset your old phones," I said, sipping slowly, keeping my back to her. "They remember everything you try to forget." Behind me, I heard the spoon clink hard against the pot. And in that sound, I finally heard the truth. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there in the kitchen, one hand still on the pot handle, the other now hanging useless at her side like her entire body had suddenly forgotten what to do with itself. I didn't turn around. I just waited. Let the silence stretch. Let it fill the space like smoke. I didn't know that phone was still synced, she said finally, and it sounded so small. Like a child caught with a secret, not a grown woman caught with a second life. I looked at her now, really looked. She wasn't glowing like she was in that video. She wasn't vibrant or clever or charming. She looked tired, defensive, lost. She looked like someone who'd been slowly sinking into something and only now realized she couldn't swim. I saw everything, I said. I saw enough. She lowered her gaze. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But it did, I replied. And even if it didn't, the lying did. The hiding, the rewriting of everything between us. Then, without expecting it, she said something I truly didn't see coming. I ended it. I blinked. What? She nodded once. Swallowed. With Elias. It didn't go anywhere. I pulled away months ago. I thought if I ignored it long enough, it wouldn't follow me. Her voice cracked then. I didn't love him. I didn't even really like him. I liked how he made me feel. Like someone new. Someone I used to be. That was the first honest thing she'd said in days. I sat at the table, arms folded, heart quiet. I didn't know if I believed her. Not fully, but I believed that she believed it. And that counted for something. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, she added after a long pause. Every time I looked at you, I saw the version of me you still thought existed. And I didn't know how to say I wasn't her anymore. I took a long breath and let it sit there between us like a truce flag. You could have said that, I replied. I didn't think you'd hear me. We didn't argue. We didn't yell. There were no ultimatums, no dramatic ultimatums thrown across the table. Just two people sitting in the wreckage of something they'd built, finally admitting it had cracks long before the storm came. The rest of the day passed in cautious quiet. We didn't talk about the bracelet, or the text, or the ghost of a hotel room that still haunted my memory. But that night, for the first time in months, we sat on the couch next to each other, not touching, but near. It felt like a start, or maybe just the end of pretending. A week later, I moved out. Not in anger, not as punishment, just space. She helped me pack. We cried once, together, then again separately. But something strange happened after that. We started writing emails. 1 or 2 every few days. Honest ones. No small talk. No performative emojis or passive-aggressive lines. Just truth. We admitted things we hadn't had the courage to say face to face. We apologized for the rot we let fester. For the slow erosion of kindness. For the years of loving each other too quietly and hurting each other too loudly. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie. It was two people unraveling, gently, without knives. 3 months later, we met for coffee. 6 months after that, we started couples therapy. Not to fix what was, but to rebuild what might be. Not the same house. A different one. Smaller. Smarter. Fireproof. It's not perfect now, but it's honest. And sometimes, that's all you need to begin again. So yes, she betrayed me. But in the strangest, most painful, and completely unexpected way. It saved both of us.